Hey, everybody. It looks like we are live. All right, let me get my messages set up here. All right, looks like we got Shirley and Dade. Hello, hello. And we went from 4 people to 17 back to 4. I wonder where all the other people went. Arc Knight. All right, well, Arc Knight already knows this. But for everybody else, we have an unboxing to do tonight and a couple other odds and ends as we go around the room, but nothing major happening tonight. So let us get started. I always feel bad for the goldfish whenever I walk in here, especially once it's in the evening. It's not too bad if I come in during the day. I think they know the difference between, me coming in the afternoon versus me coming in around feeding time. And when I'm getting ready and coming in and, getting the camera set up and whatnot, the poor goldfish practically climb out of the tank. We dodged another snow bullet today. Got a little tiny dusting. It was really, really cold and kind of just gross out all day. About 10 o'clock in the morning, it started snowing. It was coming down like like a really fine rain. It's kind of coming down hard, but it's not like a lot of it. It's just real tiny raindrops. It looked like that, but the snow version of it, it was snowing a lot. It just wasn't a lot of snow, and it didn't really amount to anything. It just gave us a little dusting over everything out in the yard, and that was pretty much the extent of it. The roads were completely fine. No fuss, no muss. Eugene, how are you this evening? Mike, hello. TK, I guess you just heard my comments about the snow we didn't get. Hey, Neil. I'm doing all right. More killifish. Nice. Just been a blah day. I haven't done jack doodly. The only thing I had on my agenda today was to go to the Walmart and get another scrubby brush for the kitchen sink. And I never even wound up going and doing that because it doesn't seem too terribly urgent. And like I said, it was really cold out today. It was only in like the mid-20s, and it was snowing. And I can go out tomorrow and get the dumb toilet brush or the kitchen brush, and that's it. I've listened to some podcasts. I watched a couple episodes of Doctor Who. Tinkered around in the garden. I looked at my mushrooms. It's been one of those kind of days. Yeah, I took a nap this afternoon, but it was actually like a half an hour, which is a really short nap for me. And then I woke up at like 6 o'clock and was just like, all right, I guess I'm up. And I've just been kind of putzing around, fucking off, killing time till 8. Fly guy, how are you? Oh, I always watch the classic Doctor Who stuff. Oh, well, damn, you definitely got some stuff done today, not me. Did I just miss a question in there somewhere? No, I guess not. I watched 2 John Pertwee episodes this morning, and I was actually just watching a Tom Baker episode when we went live. I did listen to some music earlier, but it won't even be a challenge. If anybody wants to do the music challenge, I don't think it's going to be much of a challenge. Yeah, we've been talking about getting our bathroom remodeled since we moved in here like 15 years ago. So, just, somebody's got to pay for that, and that ain't happening because we don't have the money for it. All right, let me stick my arm under here and see if I can get any crud out of there. It doesn't seem like the water's flowing as freely as it should be. And I did, oh yeah, it's got a ton. Feels like there's a shrubbery stuck to it. Yeah, that's much better. I don't know if you can really see how much that flow increased, but it definitely did. So we'll be throwing some duckweed in there once we get around to the 40, because that's getting about covered again. We'll need to get in there and pull some off. But in the meantime, let's get that turned out to get some glare off the tanks. We'll move on to the fancy goldfish tank. I cut a few pieces of filter material tonight in case I feel like changing the filters out. And I have to say, I've noticed over the last couple of bags I've bought, the filter material in those bags of polyfill is different now. I don't know how to explain it's different. It's just different. It's thinner. It seems to be like more of it just folded up, so it feels just as thick. But when you unfold, it's like 2-ply toilet paper almost. You just peel it apart and you got 2 thin little pieces, and it doesn't have the same texture to it. So I don't know what's going on. It'll still work just fine. It's still just polyester batting, but it is, I have noticed that it's different than it used to be. I like the other stuff better, of course. So whenever they make something different, they never make it better. They just make it different. Cost saving or something, no doubt. Bob. Oh, I was working it. Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, Eugene, that arowana would be awesome, even though it would still outgrow that pond. These koi are going to outgrow this pond eventually. I hope I got a couple more years out of them, but I'm definitely going to have to do something with them at some point. But arowanas are definitely jumpers. There's no way I'd have one of those in an open pond. Working from home today. Nice. Are you saying what if I actually used wool? Yeah, what if I used wool? Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think wool would be a good material, being that it's a natural fiber. I don't know if it would rot away since it's basically hair, and hair doesn't really rot, but it is still a natural fiber, and I don't necessarily think that would be a good idea to use. if you changed it out frequently, you know, and I mean like once a week, swapped out and put a new wool filter in there, it could probably work. I don't see why it wouldn't, but I definitely don't recommend it. And it is probably not cheap. If you're thinking about it in terms of being something that's like reusable, like you could take a wool filter out, wash it, and then, reuse it. Again, if you change it really frequently, possibly. Um, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to use a natural fiber like that unless you're using like that shredded coconut husk. If you were to pack something like that in a filter, it would give you some filtration, but it would also release tannin into the water. I wouldn't mind something like that necessarily. But I don't know, hair as a natural filter, because at the end of the day, that's all wool is hair. Yeah, exactly. The coconut fiber, something like that, I don't think would necessarily be a bad idea. You'd get a twofer, it would give you some sort of physical filtration, but it would also release a lot of tannic acid, and it would really put a lot of staining in your water. Now, if you're going for that, and you got a black water tank or something, then that would be an awesome way of doing it. I've thought about other kind of filter materials to use, um, like a pair of nylons or, pantyhose, whatever you want to call them. I'm old enough that I still call them nylons. um, I've thought about that before. That would be something you could use to filter certain things in certain scenarios. That would be good if you were going to say, how I filter my shrimp tank and I try to collect all the little baby shrimp out of it. I run the filter through an aquarium sieve, but if you wanted, you could also just zip tie a pantyhose, end or length on there and vac it through that, and that would collect all your little shrimplets while still allowing the water to drain or whatever. There's a lot of stuff you can use for filter material in the hobby that's not purpose made for the aquarium hobby. That's where you really save your money. Yeah, you could use sand or crushed shells. Hey, John. Let's see. Yeah, shells or well, permanently submerged. I don't know how long it would take the coconut husk to rot away. I would imagine it would take it fucking forever. I mean, they still find old coconut husk in sunken ships in the ocean from hundreds of years ago. It's almost like shredded bamboo or whatever. It just doesn't break down. So that might work. The coconut husks, or if you could get shredded bamboo, that might be a good idea. Two angelfish, nice. How are you doing this evening, Fox and family? I need to get out to my pond outside. I kind of sort of originally set it up to be like a sort of modeled after an undergravel filter. I've got the pump that pumps the water to the top of the waterfall, and I hooked a hose to it, and then basically laid the hose along like in a big loop around the bottom of the pond and drilled a shit ton of little holes all through it. and then laid a bunch of lava rock, like 2 inches of lava rock over top of that. The idea being that it would give me the biological filtration as it was, drawing the water down through the, basically the same way an undergravel filter would work. But over time, the little holes got all clogged up, and I had to like pull the hose up from under the rocks and get all the stuff out of it. And now the hose just lays on the bottom of the pond. And of course, that's 8 inches deep with rotten leaves and pond muck at this point. Plus, the snails get on it, and either the snails die or the snails just get stuck on the suction holes, like the little intake holes. And over time, I have to like reach in there and just like slide my hand all the way down the holes, and it's like, and I can just feel like a million snails coming off of the thing, and then all of a sudden the pond starts flowing again. But right now, I really need to get out there and do some maintenance on it. But like the waterfall's got leaves all packed in it. The water is barely flowing at this point. It's just been so damn cold. Like reaching into the bottom of that pond and cleaning that pump off. I might just take that hose off of there altogether. And just put some sort of basket filter or something in front of the pump itself. I don't think it necessarily needs an undergravel filter, especially since there's no fish in it. All that it houses is whatever naturally gets in there. It usually has frogs and stuff in the summertime, and tadpoles in the spring. I get a lot of insects and water striders on the surface. I mainly keep it as a water feature, and the birds love it. The animals drink out of it. I've seen raccoons in there. The cats go and drink out of it in the summertime. So I like having it as a water feature. It's just not big enough really to keep fishing year round. So if I ever do get the opportunity to actually dig it out and make it deeper and bigger, then I can start putting fish in it and they can live there year round. Yeah, I don't think ever since I got my first angelfish, I don't think I've ever been at a period in my fish keeping where I didn't have angelfish, or at least an angelfish somewhere. And in my case, I don't think I've ever been to where I didn't have multiple angelfish at any given time. I think I have 7 of them right now or something, 5 of them. It can't be that many. I'll do a count here in a minute. I got 5 of them, yeah. So I'm running low on angelfish if I only have 5. We could probably squeeze another one into the discus tank. Angelfish and discus go really well together. All right, let me throw some food at these guys. I'll go get caught up on the comments. I'm really surprised the cichlid is just kind of hanging out in the back. He's usually up here numbing it up. The thing eats like a teenage boy, and he's still growing like one too. Oh, good to hear it, Fox and family. Hopefully that'll work out. This one is a rainbow shark in this tank. The red tail shark is in the 55. Yeah, I was thinking about my ponds outside the other day, and I was thinking that next year, maybe not something like a sunfish that would ultimately get pretty big, but I could probably catch some minnows or something out at the reservoir down at the stream and throw some minnows in there. And I know it sounds cruel to some people or whatever, but leave them in there over the summer, and then if they get through next winter, they get through it. If they don't, they don't. They're just some minnows I caught down the stream. It's not going to break my heart. I don't necessarily want them to die, but I tried keeping a goldfish in there one year, and it did all right all the way up until February. I could see that it was still in there and alive. And then we had a week of like really bitter cold temperatures, and the pond froze pretty much solid. It's only about I think the pond itself, when it's empty, is 18 inches from the bottom to the very lip. And because of the way I don't have it in there quite level, it's one of those plastic molds. It has like the two tiers. And so with the gravel and the rocks and everything I put in the bottom of it, it's only about 13 inches deep or something in the middle. And so, you know, a small body of water like that after a week of single digit temperatures, and the whole thing was just a block of ice. And a few weeks later, when it finally thawed out, I went out and I saw there was a dead goldfish in there. So it didn't survive the solid block of ice freezing experience, which isn't surprising. Let's see. What would be my favorite Tetra schooling fish for a 55 with dark substrate? Well, I don't have a ton of experience with a lot of varieties, but I do have a lot of experience with the diamond tetras, and I talk the diamond tetras up all the time because they're absolutely stunning. You have to see them in person under really good lighting, or even fluorescent lighting is fine. But if you've got them under good quality lighting, they're called diamond tetras for a reason. You ever really look at a diamond and you see the fire, all these different colors and sparkles, and like every color of the rainbow is in there. And that's exactly what these fish look like. They are stunning when you see them up close. And so with them against a dark substrate, I think they would absolutely pop. But most tetras, that are even, like the lemon tetras, there's a bunch of them that are brightly colored. I think any brightly colored fish against the darker background would stand out really nice. Mind Bomb, how are you? We definitely get tadpoles in the pond outside. I'm sure there's dragonfly nymphets in there from time to time. We get all kind of critters. Again, it's just a natural pond environment at this point. I keep the pump running year round. The year that it froze up, I had actually shut it down. I left it running all year last year, and it stayed fine. It stayed liquid. There was ice around the edges, and there was even ice on the surface for a while, but the water was still flowing under the ice, and it functioned, like a pond all year long. Bobby, how are you this evening? I had to think about what you meant for a minute. Those are actually silver dollars. Those are not discus, and they do look cool as shit with the disco light as it goes around the room and hits them, and they light up flashing like that. You can see some of that on my one of my angelfish in the 29. He's got like a silvery body, and you can see the disco light coloration on the silvery body. All right, first thing we're going to do before we feed this tank is we're going to get some of that duckweed out of there. And instead of sticking my arm in there and doing it tonight, we're going to use the net. Speaking of net, I had to use this net this morning to scoop a dead gourami out of my gourami tank. I found one of my pearls in there floating this morning. Well, I found what was very little left of one of my pearls in there floating around this morning. So apparently it had been missing for a while. The reason I used the net was because I didn't think it would have held together in my hand. If I tried picking it up, I think it would have just turned to mush. It was not much of a fish left. So we're down to 5 gouramis now. They're starting to age out. And if I've lost 2, what did I lose one last week? So we've lost 2 gouramis in a matter of a week now. That to me indicates that they're starting to age out, because I got them all at the same time. And so if some of them are already starting to die, it's just a matter of time before we lose a few more. And before you know it, we're not going to have any gouramis left in the gourami tank. So I don't know if you can tell how much duckweed that is or not, but that's a lot of duckweed. You can make a hamburger out of all that duckweed. So next thing we're going to do is dump it in here. Try to get as much of it out of my net as I can. And that'll be gone by tomorrow morning. They make very short work of duckweed. All right, let's get back to feeding. Now you actually get a little bit of light shining in the tank. You can see what you're looking at. All right, and somehow I knew I ran out of my crisps the other day, so I opened a new package. And then when I set them down, there was already a package there. So I must have opened one and not remembered opening it. And so I opened a second one. So now I have two completely full containers of crisps that are already opened at the same time. I guess I can set one back on the shelf out of my way, so I don't take up as much space on the top of the tank. It's already running low on space as it is. All right. Are frogs and toads closely related to fish and catfish? Not really. I mean, it depends on how. I mean, they're all vertebrates, so sort of. But in that sense, we're just as closely related. Harryman, how are you? Oh, if you've got a duckweed issue and you want to get rid of it, get goldfish and it will vanish. I mean, I can't throw enough goldfish. I mean, I can't throw enough duckweed in this pond to satisfy those goldfish. And I mean that quite literally, that all that duckweed I put in there will be gone tomorrow. And when I say tomorrow, I mean tomorrow when I come down and turn the lights on in the morning, it'll already be gone. I've put far more than that in there before, and it's been gone in under 24 hours. They absolutely destroy duckweed. African dwarf frogs. I have to figure out what that meant. I used to have the dwarf frogs years ago, but I just kind of stopped keeping them. Not really sure why. I don't know if they got too expensive or I had problems with them climbing out of my tanks because a lot of my tanks are open top. But I had quite a few of those back in the day. I actually had some that used to sing. I had a couple in a tank, and I don't know if they had mated or were trying to mate or whatever. But I kept hearing this really, really high pitched peeping noise, and like it would go for several seconds and then stop, and then it would go for several seconds and then stop. It almost sounded like an alarm of some sort, but it wasn't regular enough to be an alarm. It drove me crazy. I could not figure out where it was coming from because it always sounded really quiet and really far away. And I finally just started doing the, warmer or colder thing. It was really going strong one night, and I just kept, I'd move a few feet this way, I'd move a few feet that way. And eventually I zeroed in on it and I got my ear right up to the tank. It was a 40 breeder that I had at the foot of my waterfall back in the day when I had that set up. And sure enough, the noise was coming out of the fish tank. And I thought maybe the filter was squeaking at first or something. And then I looked in there, and one of the frogs was all like up in this weird pose at the bottom of the tank. And I could see his throat moving. And I realized that's a fucking frog singing. I had no idea they did that, but they did. I actually had the dwarf frog singing in my tanks. But that was the only one that ever did it. Let's see. I don't really have names for any of my angelfish. That one actually does have a name. That one's named Frank Gorshin. Big school of diamond tetras. Would look good with anything really. They're not really any color. They're, you know, if you had to pick a color to call them, they'd be sort of silvery, and silver looks good with anything. But again, if you go with a darker color, like my diamonds, and you're going to see them in just a moment, are in with my crypt, and it's got like a reddish green coloration to it. And of course, I do have the black substrate, and you can't really see the substrate through all the plants, but it is in there, and it is dark. um, but any kind of plant that they can swim, you know, and interact with and swim like between the leaves of it or whatever. They're really active fish. And if you've got a nice sized school of them in there and you've got a heavily planted tank, again, as you're going to see in just a moment when we move to the next tank, they'll breed. And even though they'll try to eat the babies, if you've got enough places for the babies to hide, some of them will survive. So the tank that we're going again to be looking at in just a moment is I put 7 diamonds in there and 7 or 9 Buenos Aires tetras in there. Like so many years ago at this point, I've forgotten how many years it's been since I put them in there. But I've still got I've got more than that now. I've got like 11 of each or something. And it's just because over the years, as some have aged out and died off, others have been born, but it's at a steady enough pace that the tank is just self-stocking. It's not getting overrun with new ones, but I'm also getting enough new ones that I've just never have to worry about stocking this tank. So it's kind of cool. I am thinking about putting an angelfish in it, though, believe it or not. As much as I hate to think about those glowfish, seeing those glow angelfish were just so awesome. And I really want a purple one. And I think it would look a little weird in this tank, but I also think it would look really awesome in this tank. So I'd like to add some neons in here. I think neons would look really good in this tank. And again, another angelfish in this tank would look pretty good because I do have the discus in here, but the discus and the angelfish get along just fine. So I'm not worried about mixing those two together. I won't put 2 angelfish in a 55, but I'll put an angelfish and where's the food I'm looking for? That's not the food you're looking for. That's the food I'm looking for. I will put an angelfish and a discus together, but I will not put 2 angelfish together. And even 2 discus would probably be problematic in here. And if you look closely down here in the woodwork, you might see my red-tailed shark. That red-tailed shark is named Shamu because it was given to me by Shamu, so I named it after his former owner. Let's see. Frank Gorshin, are you familiar with old school Star Trek, William Shatner Star Trek from the 1960s? There was an episode in there where one of the characters was a guy with a half black face and a half white face. And I can never remember the character's name. It was like Tal or something like that. But he was played by the actor Frank Gorshin. And so when I saw that black angelfish in the aquarium at the pet store, if you look at it, it's not exactly black and white, but one side of his face has a lot more white on it, and then the other side has a lot more black on it. And so I just decided while he was still in the fish store, I decided he was Frank Gorshin. And so he came home as Frank Gorshin. Frank Gorshin also played the Riddler on the original Batman with Adam West back in the day, for reference. Kendra, $20. Thank you so much. You went to the Tesla Plaid because you only live once? Yeah, but you don't need to accelerate how quickly it comes to an end. Yeah, I need to look at my receipt and find out when I have to take those fish, those dead fish back. Your female only Guppy's tank has fries in it. Nice. Yeah, the pink one, like that bright pink red, it wasn't really hot pink, but it wasn't really red either. That's the one I saw. I saw one at PetSmart and at Petco. And even though that's not really my color, it just was so striking that I just stood there for 5 solid minutes, like telling myself not to buy this thing. Um, so I talked to the woman that worked at the Petco, and she says that while she's not personally seen one yet, they do have a SKU for the green one. So that sort of like bright lime green color. Apparently, they have one of those too. But she said those are the only SKUs that she's seen. So as far as she knows, they have not done a purple one yet. But I swear, when they do a purple glowfish, angelfish, just for the novelty of it, I will have one. I'm again, people that know me know if you spray paint something purple, I'll buy it. I don't care if it's something I don't need. You paint it purple, and I'll buy it. I gotta like refrain from picking up like odd spatulas and shit when I'm in the Walmart because it's just the right shade of purple, and like my hand starts reaching for it. So I get a purple, I got a thing for angelfish anyway. I always have. Um, and you give me a purple one, and I don't like, I can't not buy that. I have to go buy that. Plus, the very first fish I ever bought, well, one of the very first fish I ever bought was when glowfish had just come out. Um, I didn't even know what a skirt tetra was. This is how I learned what skirt tetras were. But I saw the galactic purple skirt tetra version of it, and so I named him Zaphod. And so one of my very first fish was a purple galactic purple glowfish. So almost as kind of a nod to my origins, I'm totally down for a purple glowfish angelfish, and I cannot wait to find one. Well, while they're babies, it'll probably be fine. But as they grow up and mature, like somebody's, as Terry Pratchett said, it's like having two big men in the room. Everything's fine for a while, but sooner or later, one of them's going to have to stretch. So, you might get a few years out of it. I've had 2 or 3 years of peaceful cohabitation to suddenly one day come down and one of them's going to kill the other one if I don't separate them. So, you should be fine while they're young. And you may get lucky and you may get 10 years of peaceful, you know, every fish is different, even though certain kind of fish maybe overall have a general sort of disposition. These fish are skittish. These tend to be more aggressive, or these are more fin nippy. There's still variation within those archetypes. And so just because this type of fish is nippy, that little bastard's really nippy, whereas this one, he doesn't seem to bother as many fish as the other ones do. And so with angelfish, it's the same way. Their overall aggression level is fairly low for the scale of cichlids, but it's there. There is an aggression level, but I've had some angelfish that were downright timid. I've had others that were just monster assholes. And so you can get lucky. All three of those might stay in the same tank for 10 years with no problem. I would just play it by ear, but just be prepared. It is a possibility that one day all hell's going to break loose and somebody in that tank is going to be trying to kill somebody else. Craig, how are you? Acid Green Corey. I haven't seen that one. Oh, I did see that one. Now, when you said acid green, I didn't realize you were talking about the glowfish. I did see the glow cories. I completely forgot about them. I was going to mention that, and I was so overwhelmed by that angelfish, I completely forgot to mention that I saw the glow cories too. I've even seen glow sharks. I know they have those now, like the rainbow sharks or the red tail sharks. They have glow versions of them. I don't feed them anything elaborate. My go-to food is Viber Bites. I really like them a lot, and the fish seem to really like them a lot. But my next go-to food is just Tetra Pro color enhancing crisps. It's like $9 or $10 for that big ass can of it. I've been using it for years and years. My discus have been raised on that. I think it's good stuff. I also use the Tetra crumbles or granules, whatever you want to call those. And I like the Hikari um, algae wafers. So they get them sometimes too. Yeah, I was going to say male or female doesn't really matter with the fish. The female can be just as aggressive as the males, or it depends on the fish. Well, my experience, if you have a larger angelfish and then you add smaller ones, probably not going to be much of an issue because the larger one won't see the smaller ones as a threat because they're so small. Now, having said that, I've also had smaller ones get the shit beat out of them, and I've had to take them out of the tank because they were attacked immediately and they were so small, they were defenseless. But very often, the small ones just get left alone because they're too small to be seen as a threat. Um, once they start growing into those teenage years, though, they start getting looked at a little differently. And so, again, you might get quite a long time without any problems at all. And then suddenly one day you have problems. Not guaranteeing that, but that is, been my experience on multiple occasions. Not sure what to tell you about the Cory eggs. I've only ever had one Cory lay eggs, and that was years ago, and nothing ever came of them either. I think the Cory itself will end up eating the eggs. Yeah, I don't. There's no real definite way to know with the angelfish until you see them. The one laying the eggs is the female. Um, you can look at the cloaca, and sometimes the female cloaca will be larger and more protruding, whereas the males is sort of smaller and more pointy looking. But again, this is all subjective, and you got to have a comparison. You got to look at several of them to be able to say, well, is this one bigger than that one? I don't know. A lot of people will say that the females tend to have a plumper, sort of wider build to them, which is common in a lot of fish, where the females will be thicker. But again, maybe you got a big chunky male, or you got a thin female. It's you can't really go by that. They're gauges. You can kind of guesstimate which one is male and female, but you're really not going to know until you see them, in their spawning. You're not allowed to breed goldfish? I didn't know that. Yeah, some of the live bears can be so aggressive, like sexually aggressive, that it's just impossible to keep them with other ones. What's the more colorful fish, male guppies or male bettas? I'm going to say guppies. And I'm going to say guppies because with the betta fish, while they are fabulous, The fabulous you're taking in is largely due to their structure. They have all those crazy, tapestry looking fins and all that kind of stuff. And they do have very vibrant colors. They're just they pop. They look like they're glowing, and they're just stunning when you see them. But when you get into guppies, there are so many different markings and patterns and color combinations, and guppies are amazing when you start looking into guppies. They're smaller and they're not as striking overall. You've really got to look at a guppy. But take a few minutes one time next time you're at the pet store and look at a cobra guppy. Just look at a cobra guppy's tail for a few minutes. The amount of markings that are in that tail and the patterning and everything, it's just amazing. And you just don't get stuff like that with the betta fish. So at a quick glance, the betta fish is the peacock with the big fabulous finnage and everything. But when you really get into, the guppy is the Rembrandt, that's got all of that detail, and just everything is in there, and it's just amazing. And of course you get a lot of different colors and color combinations that you don't get with the betta fish. So I'm going with guppies as the more colorful. I'm also a big fan of guppies, if you couldn't tell. Very underrated fish. Yeah, guppies are just awesome. Yeah, swordtails can be pretty impressive too. Yeah, I've never really been into the breeding of the fishes. So again, if you missed it earlier, I did take another gourami out of this tank earlier today. So we're down to 5 of the pearl gouramis, and considering I bought them all at the same time, it seems like they're starting to age out. Now that doesn't mean one of those bastards isn't going to live for 4 more years in there, but it's not going to be unlikely over the next 6 months if we don't lose a few more of them. So we'll have to start thinking about what to do with that tank at some point, but not today. Wonder if Steve made it home from work okay today. The storm that came through today was came up from the south, and it actually went just underneath of me. Where I live, we are so often right on the either the edge of the storm, or we're right on the rain snow line. And if it goes just a few miles this way, we're getting dumped on by snow. But if it goes a few miles that way, it's just going to be rain. And so today we were just on the edge of the storm, and so all we got was a little bit. But like down where Steve was, down near Annapolis, they were supposed to get up to like 3 inches. He sent me a picture earlier, and the roads were just wet and gross, but there was some snow on the grass and the sidewalks and stuff. But he's not here with us now, and so it makes me wonder if he's not still making his way home from work, because all it takes is one stupid accident or whatever, and especially down where he was, he might still be trying to get home. The gouramis in my tank were mixed sex. I just got 7 of them when I started. The gouramis are pretty easy to tell the difference between the males and the females. The females have really rounded fins. Both the anal fin and the dorsal fin are much more teardrop shaped, but the male gouramis have a really long, pointed dorsal fin and anal fin. The anal fin, the tip of it comes all the way down and is equal in length to where the actual tail fin ends, whereas the females just have this little sort of rounded anal fin on them. Very easy to spot the difference. And the dwarf gouramis are it's like they're the most obvious example of what I'm talking about. The dwarf gourami females have a very small, rounded, teardrop shaped dorsal fin, and then the male has this long, pointed fin that goes all the way back to the tip of the tail fin. So I always had a mixed bunch of males and females. Never saw any spawning activity in all the years I've had them. One of them's got a bum eye. It has for a long time, though, so I don't know if that's going to make any effect in the aging out process. But one of them's never looked all that super healthy and has always had a white, sort of blind eye. So who knows? We'll see. I think I should still have 4 of them left in there, or 5 of them left. You want to make dinosaur guppies? Does he taste like cotton candy? All right, we're just going to go ahead and move on from this tank. I don't know if you can see the loaches in the bottom there, but there's not a lot going on in that tank. I got the angelfish. I've got 1 tetra, and then I have some loaches on the bottom. There's also a clown pleco in that tank, but that one rarely makes an appearance. And we won't linger too long on this tank because there's not much going on in here either. This one's sort of on the to be addressed back burner. It needs to have something done to it, but I'm not in any hurry to get to it. And again, with all the friggin' debt I'm in, I'm not, and with all my loss of money, when I went and did I did my big Annapolis day the other day, and it's my biggest day of the month, money earnings wise. It's where I make the bulk of my money in the entire month. I do it in one day. But I have 3 customers that drop off for the winter, and I won't start spraying them again until next March or even possibly April, depending on when the weather breaks. So it made for a really short Annapolis day. I was home by like 2:30, but it saved me like 2 hours of work. But it cost me $525. That was how much I would have billed. Obviously, it would have cost me gas and repellent and stuff like that. But $525 less money for saving 2 hours out of my day. I would have much rather just spent those 2 hours working, because that's a significant chunk of money to not have for my bills every month when I already can't pay my damn bills every month. So I'm looking forward to spring. It used to not matter as much because the way YouTube worked was my ad revenue would go up towards the holiday season, and it would peak in December and then slowly start going down after January. And so I made up the difference with extra YouTube money. But since my YouTube money just went flat years ago and it's just the same little bit every month, my winters are rough now. So I'm definitely not planning any new big aquarium renovations anytime soon. All right, let me see. Just getting caught up on some comments. All right, and I am caught up. All right, let's move on to the next tank since this one has pretty much nothing happening. You can almost make it out, but you can see one of the discus hiding back here. The discus in this tank are really reclusive. They never come out. Again, I'm not 100% sure if it's the minnows in there that scare them or when I stand in front of the tank all the time, because it is, my, Grand Central Operations Control Center, and I stand right in front of it and walk around in front of it, and maybe it just keeps them freaked out. I don't know. But the whole tank just kind of needs a revamp. I want to move those discus somewhere else, put something else in that tank. It's got potential, but it is definitely a diamond in the rough. All right, I'm going to do a dab. I ran out of cone papers, So I rolled a joint yesterday. It was definitely weird smoking a joint compared to the cones that I'm used to. It wasn't bad. It was just different. But I didn't feel like mucking with it tonight, so I didn't bother to roll another joint. So we are just going to do a dab, and I am still hitting off of this amazingly delicious. I think this is Skittles, but I'm not 100% sure. I had it labeled as Skittles, but I also had a question mark on the label, and I only do that when I'm pretty sure I know what plant it is. If I don't remember what it was, if I do a transplant or something and come back the next day and forgot to label it, I'm like, fuck, which one did I take that from? Then I won't. I'll just put a question mark on it. But if I put the label and a question mark, it's because I'm pretty sure it was this one, but it could be a mistake. And considering how many seeds I got off of it, whatever it is, I'm going to have a lot more of them in the future without having to bother making cuttings. It is so good. It is delicious. Speaking of letting them grow out, let's go check on my giant, massive, huge bud before the light goes out. We can come back in and finish looking at the tank here in a minute. And I looked at my mushrooms again today, or my psyllium, and we're right on schedule. So that's a Tropicana cookies from seed. That's Super Silver Haze. That was one of the ones that self-seeded. I wanted to find out if the self-seeding seeds would grow, and they have. And then this is the self-seeding from what we're smoking tonight, that Skittles. So I even put another question mark on it so I know what plant it came from. But this is the one that's an absolute monster. With the lights out already. But this thing is an absolute monster. Let me turn the brightness way up on that. Look at the size of that thing. It is just absolutely massive, and it just keeps getting bigger. I had to stake it up again. I had to put another stake in here and tie this top section up because it had fallen all the way over and was just leaning against the side of the tent. But it's bigger in diameter now than a soda can. And it's not even getting brown hairs on it yet. So I've still got at least a couple more weeks of this thing packing on weight. It's insane. I cannot get over how big that thing is. So that's a Tropicana cookies. And it is the biggest, probably single biggest bud I've ever grown. And it's only on a little 3-foot tall plant. So if you remember the other night, I was talking to my member stream, but I did my new bag of mushrooms, the mycelium that I'm allowing to grow in now. I did that a little differently than I did the original bag. The original bag, I injected the spores. I didn't touch it for 2 weeks. When I came back, it had a big clump of mycelium in it. And so I broke that up, and then I let it sit for 2 more weeks. Before it was ready to start fruiting. So it took a full month before it was ready to start fruiting. This one I've been breaking up. As soon as I see some mycelium, I break it up and mix it around. And so I've already mixed it up several times, but now it seems as though it's evenly mixed. It's all sort of growing all around the bag. And I'm just going to wait for it to fill in from where it is. But I looked at the calendar, and it is still 6 more days before we hit that 1 month mark. And I really think it's going to, the way it's almost fully, it's got the mycelium everywhere at this point. It's just a matter of letting it fill in. And so I really think it's still, timing wise, it's going to be 6 of one, half dozen the other. I think it's still going to be about a month before I can start fruiting it. But if that's the case, we're down to about 2 weeks. It'll be about another week or so I can start fruiting it. And then it takes about a week or so, maybe 10 days before you get your first, batch of mushrooms out of it. Yeah, I cleaned a bunch of stuff out of this tank recently, so you can actually see in there now. And No Face is pretty good about coming to the front, when it's feeding time and swimming around. But he does spend a lot of his time for some reason hanging out on the other far corner of the tank, like past where he just went. You can see the air bubbles. He goes into that other corner and spends a lot of his time chilling out there. I don't know why. That would probably be the most turbulent corner of the tank. And you'd think he'd try to avoid that area and stay where the water's calmer, but he seems to like it over there. So whatever. I mean, he's got options. He can go where he wants. If that's where he likes being, then, so be it. All right, let's move on to the final tank we're going to look at. And after we get it fed for a little bit, I'm going to come over, sit down, and we'll hang out for a little while before the evening is over. All right, we're going to stick with the Vibrobites in this tank. Got a lotus bloom, a lotus bud sticking up out of the water. If I remember, if someone reminds me, I'll show it to you. But it's not open yet. It's just a flower spike sticking up out of the water. Oh, right. We still have the unboxing to do. What are guppies? So after we're done feeding this tank, we do have an unboxing. Ark sent me some stuff, and I have not yet opened it. It got here on Tuesday. The tracking said Saturday, so it's not even supposed to be here till tomorrow, and it showed up on Tuesday. So that was fucking fast to come from, literally as far away from me in the continental United States as you can possibly get. And what'd you mail it on? Saturday, I think? Friday, something like that? Anyway, it got here in like 3 days. So we do have an unboxing to do. Let me get my light readjusted up here. I changed the light on the light that's on top of my camera. I changed it so that we could look at that weed a little more closely, but let me fix it now. All right. Guess I'll do another dab while I wait for you all to finish watching the feeding. And then I'm going to come sit down because my back is bothering me. I don't know why. Probably because I spend so damn much time sitting down. I haven't been doing shit lately. I've been so inactive. I hate this time of year. I depressed myself the other day because I thought about it and I realized we're still like, well, this was the other day. So at the time it was like, we're still 3 weeks away from winter even starting. I feel like I can't wait for winter to be over and we got 3 weeks before it even starts. If you pay close attention, you can actually see both of my chocolate zebra plecos out in the bottom. I haven't been out of my kayak since July. $50. The bright orange fish is a albino millennium rainbow fish, and then the 2 yellow ones you can see are the females. I don't know what it got down to overnight last night, but I know the high temperature today was only 26 degrees or something. So it was definitely a chilly day today. And I know we got a big cold front moving through. If you look at a big weather map, you'll see like the whole northeast corner, Great Lakes area, Chicago. Like there's just a huge polar vortex or some shit moving over us, and the weather has just been freezing cold. And then, like I said, we got a little bit of snow today. Oh, hang on a minute. For anybody that was asking about it before or talking about it before, look at them just munching away on that duckweed. Nom, 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 nom. They just absolutely destroy that duckweed. And look how little is actually left in the pond already. Oh, never mind. I didn't look over here. It's still there's still some left, but you can definitely see them in there working on it already. I swear, putting that pond in the basement down here was the best thing I've ever done in my fish room. I loved my waterfall. I got a lot of good experiences and a lot of good video, and we all enjoyed the waterfall for the time I had it. But no looking back. I do not regret getting rid of it and putting that pond in. All right, I'm gonna come on around there and we'll do an unboxing. I have a suspicion I know at least some of what's going to be in this box, especially since I already talked to Ark about it, so I know what he was sending me. So that gave me a pretty good hint. All right, let me get you set up back here in a little more appropriate position. All right. Get my light turned on. All right. Box. Open box. All right. So we have some little sponge filters. Boy, you weren't kidding when you said they were little sponge filters. These are cool. I like these a lot. But I think this one is going to be the one that we're going to go with because that'll be perfect in the corner of my little shrimp tank. I'm guessing this is just another one of those. Yeah, it's just another little tiny. So whatever's the smallest one, I'm assuming this is probably the same thing that's in this box. But if this one's smaller, I'll use this one. So that's awesome. And then we got the little hoses that go with them. And we have what appears to be a silicone ashtray. All right, I've got the silicone ashtray, and I'm guessing that's glow-in-the-dark material. Maybe not. I don't know. I can't tell. It doesn't seem like it's glow-in-the-dark material, but it looks like it. So there's a silicone ashtray. Don't know if I'll use it as an ashtray, but it'll definitely get used to put stuff in. And then I got a bunch of little knick-knack doodad marijuana leaf Christmas ornaments. Oh, some of them are even purple. Oh, I like that green too. That's pretty. Color's not really coming out, but that's a really pretty green. Oh, and the purples even have sparklies in them. Purple and sparkly, two of my favorite things. All right, well, thanks, Ark. We'll find some place to hang the ornaments. I'm sure some of them will get hung down here in the fish room. and I will definitely put stuff in there. But I don't think we're going to do it tonight. So Sunday night, we will be installing a little sponge filter in my shrimp tank. We can actually, let me set some of this stuff down out of the way, and we'll go look at the shrimp tank for a minute. It's actually starting to look a little clearer, but it still has a ways to go. So you can actually see into the tank now, whereas you couldn't see anything in there before. So it is clearing up a little bit, but it's obviously not right. It should be crystal clear water in there. It shouldn't be all cloudy like that. So I think I don't have enough biofiltration going on, and that's what that little air filter, sponge filter is going to do. That's the extent of the water flow I got going on. Look, there's even a shrimp in the top tray. I don't know if you can see him or not, but right here is a little shrimp. Oh, you see him dart away. There's a little shrimp lying right here. So that's it. That's the extent of the water flow I have in the whole tank, is that little bit of water trickling through there. So you can imagine that that's not a shit ton of biofiltration. And putting that air stone with a little sponge filter on there is going to clear that right up. It'll take a bit for the filter to cycle in. It's still going to have to do that, but once it does, that all that cloudiness will just go away immediately. I'd say within 2 weeks of putting that filter on there, it should be cleared out. All right, let's get caught up on some comments. Oh, it is even smaller. Nice. I'll use that one because I don't need much. I just need a little extra oomph of biological filtration because it's on the cusp. It really wants to be clear, but it's just not quite enough. So we'll start with that little tiny one. It'll be as unnoticeable as possible. I'll have to get a little air pump, and we'll put one of the restrictors on it so I don't put a lot of air through it. Right, Ark made all that stuff that he sent me, in case you were wondering. Yeah, that would be a good tank to put the little dwarf frogs in, but they would have a feast on those shrimp in there, I think. And if we look in my other shrimp tank, which isn't technically a shrimp tank, but I mean, it kind of is, the sponge filter always has shrimp climbing all over it. Probably got more snails in this tank than I do shrimp at this point, but I do have a lot of shrimp. There's a really dark red one right there. My favorite are the ones, you can see one right there on the front of the filter. It has the blue body with the orange stripe down their back. I got a bunch of those. Those are fantastic looking. And then, of course, I have a bunch that are just sort of a pale orange and a bunch that are almost clear. They don't really have much color at all. But I do have some zingers in there. That blue one with the orange stripe down the back, I think is awesome looking. Love that one. The dwarf frog, I don't know if the frog would eat snails or not. I don't think it would, because I don't think it could digest a snail shell, and I don't know how it would eat the snail without just swallowing the whole thing. So snails are probably okay. And if you're talking about like the kind of snails you buy, like mystery snails or something like that, they're big enough that you don't have to worry about that. It's not like they're going to bite the meat of the foot or anything like that. But if you've got pond snails and you don't want to wipe them out, I don't think that would be an issue with the little frog. Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. I should do that for my shrimp too. In fact, we're going to do that right now too. Let me get you off of here first, because I need two hands to do this. I have some crushed coral right here. It's going to make the water turn white for a little bit, but I don't know how much crushed coral I have left in the tank itself. So what we're going to do is just put some in here. Oh, that little shrimp is still in there. And so now we'll have water flowing over some crushed coral. And you see how some of those bits are really, really bright white, and then the other ones are sort of the grayish white. The really bright white bits are the oyster shells. So despite that bag saying oyster shell, it's 95% crushed coral, and then there's some oyster shells mixed in with it. But that will allow the water to flow over that, and that will add mineralization to the tank, because right now I don't think I have any. I know at one point I'd thrown a cuttlebone in there, and at one point I had some of that crushed coral in the back, but I don't even see that anymore. Yeah, you can see a few little bits of white specks and stuff down there in the back, so that's where that crushed coral, it's almost completely dissolved and gone at this point. So I'm glad you brought that up. By putting that in there with the water flowing over it like that, that'll give me a good mineralization for my shrimps. We can check that from time to time too, and see how rapidly it dissolves, and see if it clogs up or creates like a filter-like material. I'm assuming at some point the Java moss in there will just grow over it, and it'll just have Java moss growing over it. What size tank is it in? That was a 5-gallon you were just looking at, and I have a lot of this crypt. Well, I don't have a lot of it, but I have like a chunk of this crypt growing in that 5-gallon, and you can see that's all laying across the surface, and that one little piece is almost filling the tank. So, if it's a small tank, they make different species of anubias that tend to stay really small. They don't need much in the way of maintenance or anything. You could put some Java fern in there. They make different species of Java fern that don't get too big. That's a really easy one. It doesn't take a lot of maintenance. What other kind of plants? Java moss, of course. You could put that in anything. It'll grow anywhere. You grow that in your toilet if you wanted. I don't know. There's a lot of low maintenance, easy to grow plants out there. I've got limited experience with plants. Hey, Yinzers. I can take you, if you haven't seen the fish room, I can take you for a quick tour around the room and show you all the tanks. So in a 10-gallon tank, my recommendation would be to stick with all the plants that are considered like beginner plants, easy maintenance plants, and then look at the size of them. If they say that, these grow 18 inches tall, maybe that's not the plant you want in a 10-gallon tank. And then just go with plants you like. The betta fish isn't going to be problematic with any kind of plant, as far as I know. I've never seen any of my betta fish eating plants or anything, digging anything up. So plant it the way you like it. But the things to consider would be, as a beginner, go with some lower maintenance, easy to grow kind of stuff, and then look at how big they get, and you look at that and you should be all right. All right, let's do a quick tour around the room. All right, so you've seen the discus tank that I'm sitting in front of. We got the goldfish pond here. I'll turn the light back on for a minute. This is koi, goldfish, and a bunch of other random fish that are in there at the moment. You can see they're mostly over here because I put a bunch of duckweed in there tonight, and they're in there feasting on the duckweed. So I got the pond with the waterfall flowing in. Lots of different plants and stuff growing on that. let's get this light turned off because it puts a lot of glare on everything else. So you already saw the discus tank, but we do have a lotus flower bud sticking up. That'll probably be blooming tomorrow and gone by Sunday. But I got all my lily pads floating on the surface. If you ever want your red tiger lotus to flower, you've got to let the lily pads form on the surface and let them do their thing. If you keep them all trimmed back so that they never reach the surface, the plant will never flower. The downside is, of course, the inside of your tank is going to look like a spaghetti monster attacked it, and you're not going to be able to see much in the way of light getting into the lower part of the tank. So we move on to the fancy goldfish. This tank needs an upgrade. They're not cramped in there, but they could certainly use more room. Again, it's got to be on hold for right now. I just can't afford another tank. But I'd like to move them up into like a 70 or something and maybe put a nice pleco in the bottom to share the tank with them or something. I don't think they'd need to be in there by themselves. But those are my fancy goldfish. This tank, we have our school of silver dollars, and they just go right on down the line. I've got two different species. The smaller ones with spots are the spotted silver dollars. And then the larger ones are just the standard paint job silver dollars. So that's my big boy right there, I think. No, the big boy is right there. That one's huge. That thing's like the size of a small dinner plate. I've also got the couple of cichlids in here. I got a jewel cichlid. I got that pearl cichlid, that geo in the back. You can kind of make them out hiding back there. I've got the angelfish in here. I've got a shark in here. I've got a big 12-inch pleco. He's hiding right there, but you can just about make his face out sitting there looking at you. And then I've got a spotted tilapia in the back. This tank's got my angelfish, Frank Gorshin, and a bunch of live bears of miscellaneous sorts. This is a filterless tank. We just got in there tonight and cleared a whole bunch of duckweed off the surface. That's where all the duckweed in the pond came from. Oh, and this stuff, I just noticed that I was talking about this before. I planted this years ago. I think that's Suswassertang, or however you pronounce it. It's like this little green stuff growing all over everything, and it's been years since I put it in there, and I completely forgot about it. But if you can, let's see if I can block out some of the glare without, not really. If I block out the light, you can't see the, try turning that off. Does that help? Well, anyway, you can just about make it out. But now that I'm looking, it's growing all across the top of that piece of wood. And it's growing all down in the back of the tank. It's growing all over here. So that stuff's spreading like crazy in there. And then this, believe it or not, is an Anubias. I haven't touched that in years and years and years. All these little teeny tiny leaves you can see on there. That's an Anubias. I have a couple of Anubias that are like that, but this one is so many years old and it's still so tiny. I can't believe it. But anyway, that's the filterless tank. This is my 55. I've got a bunch of diamond tetras in there and a bunch of Buenos Aires tetras in there. And then I also have a bunch of crypt in there. And somewhere hiding in there is a discus. Over here, we got my gourami tank. I've got an angelfish, a discus, a bunch of loaches, a big old catfish. And then, of course, I've got some pearl gouramis in there as well. And, of course, a lot of black skirt tetras. And this is probably my prettiest single discus. The colors in this fish are just stunning. It's just an amazing looking fish. Of course, like the angelfish, whenever you point a camera at them, they go into two-dimensional mode and you can't actually see any color or anything. So that's the 55 gourami tank. This is a 29. This doesn't have a whole lot of fish in it. But this Anubias down here in this corner, I haven't trimmed this in probably a decade, and it's still that small. And then, of course, I got this one over here. I got to cut this one down twice a year. I got a 40. This one needs work. It's got some discus in it and a couple of minnows, and that's about it. So we definitely need to get in there and do some work at some point. Over here, we got my 20 that's got my betta fish and some rasboras and some tetras in there. I got some black neons and some brilliant rasboras. We got a bunch of shrimps in the tank down there. And we didn't look at the world's largest Anubias plant either. So this one is also Anubias, and you can see how it's a little, the leaves get burnt up because it's a low light plant, and I have it sitting right underneath with all these, you know, floodlights. But that's all that one big plant in there, and that's an Anubias. We look at the rhizome back here, the size of that thing. It's like a branch. So lots and lots of really good root growth on that. Oh, look, there's my my pearl cichlid hiding back there. And of course, I love what these leaves look like when you look at them from behind and you can see the backlighting on them. They're gorgeous. Look at all that detail. And I haven't even had any mushrooms tonight. I won't have any mushrooms for at least a couple more weeks. It's kind of bumming me out. We can, if you want, I can show you the dead mycelium from my first bag that's finally done. Got one final mushroom out of it on the 6th flush, and the final mushroom never even fully developed. It kind of turned out half developed. It was really small. After I dried it out, it only wound up weighing 0.3 grams. I ate it last night. It was enough that I noticed it, but it was really, really mild, as I expected. Again, it wasn't even a half a gram. And so that bag is just done. I know I'm not going to get anything else out of that. So if anybody wants to see what it looks like when it's spent, I can show it to you. I did cut a chunk out of it, though. I wanted to see what the inside of it looked like, so I can show you what the inside of it looks like, too, if you want. All right. That was your quickie tour. All right. Let me get caught up to where I was. Do you need a filter or a bubble if you only have the one betta fish in the tank? You probably could get away without having either. If you have any other fish in the tank, I would recommend at least an air stone if you don't want to do a filter on it. But a 10-gallon tank, especially if all you have is a betta fish, then you don't need any kind of filtration at all. It'll change the way you do maintenance and that sort of thing. You might find you do want a small air stone because without the water circulation, the stuff that gets to the bottom, the uneaten fish food, the dead plant material, it's not going to break down or deteriorate properly in a low oxygen environment. So while the betta fish could live in it, it's probably not going to be the healthiest of tanks. And so having a small sponge filter in the corner or a little power head, just something that moves the water around and keeps it well oxygenated, is going to be better for the health of the tank. But the fish itself can live, in a filterless tank without any issue. My filterless tank that I talk about has 2 power heads and an air stone. So I've got plenty of water circulation and aeration and all that stuff. It just doesn't have a filter on it. All right, let me see where I was. No, you don't need to worry about CO2 for the kind of plants I'm talking about. No, creeping Jenny will grow across the surface of the water if you have it in a planter near the surface or if the roots are in the water. But the plant itself has to be able to grow up and out of the water if you're going to use creeping Jenny. I used to have underwater lights in the pond, but they stopped working and I never really messed with them. I generally don't go for stuff that doesn't look natural. And as cool as like colored lights in the pond is, it doesn't really look natural. That's why I made such a fuss about talking about getting a glow angelfish. That really is just not my thing, is to get these weird, generally not a big fan of albinos, even though I do occasionally get albino fish like the ones behind me. Um, I don't like the balloon fish. I don't like stuff that looks like it's been fucked with. I like natural looking stuff, and glowfish definitely do not look natural. But I make an exception here and there. All right. Blackmores can get pretty big, maybe about 8 to 10 inches. So you need a pretty big tank for blackmores eventually. Um, Creeping Jenny is also probably a common name that gets used for more than one plant, depending on where you live or whatever. So when you say Creeping Jenny, I'm not sure it's the same. Um, I know that they sell a variant of it called Golden Jenny, which it's the same plant, just sort of a different color variant. But the Creeping Jenny, the stuff I have, again, you could put it underwater, but it's going to grow to the surface and then float across the surface. If you leave it underwater, eventually the leaves and stuff are going to start dying off of it if it's the same kind of plant that I've got. Oh, let's see. I'm assuming that the zine machine is probably crashed out sleeping. Oh, no, Bob, I actually haven't. I keep forgetting I have those fruit flies, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's my creeping Jenny would do the same thing. If I had, if I dunked a bunch of it underwater, um, it would start growing roots out of the stuff that was underwater, but all the leaves would die off. But the part that would continue growing would be out above the water. And I never had any success with it growing submerged. It'll do it for a little while. Eventually, the leaves will fall off, and you got to have the rest of it up and out of the water. All right, these are my fruit flies, and it looks like there's eggs and shit all over the place in here. I don't usually feed fruit flies, so I hadn't really thought about doing this in a while. But I just poured a bunch of cruddy goop in there. I didn't realize it was all melty. I thought that was like solid stuff. So I hope the discus like the fruit fly food. I just inadvertently poured into the tank. Blah. So I think they're probably going to eat the fruit fly food more so than they're going to eat the fruit flies themselves. I never really messed with the live food or the frozen stuff or whatever. It's too much of a hassle. The only live food I ever used to mess with on any regular basis was what is now my snail tank. I mean, I still call it my snail tank. What is now my shrimp tank used to be a snail tank. It was a 5-gallon tank that all I grew in there was snails. I used to just feed the shit out of it and grow a million snails. And I had a puffer at the time. And so that was what the puffer lived off of, was those snails. because he's a puffer, and he, occasionally I would use freeze dried shrimp, but usually snails was what he got as his main food. But that was out of necessity. If I could have just put granules in the tank or flakes or something, and he could have lived off of that, that's what he would have been living off of. It's just a pain in the butt. It's not necessary. It's fun. It's nice to do if you want to give your fish a treat or whatever. And I'm not knocking it. It's just, for me, it isn't worth it. I don't get any kind of a emotional, spike. I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm giving my fish a treat or doing something special for them when I give them fruit flies. I just think I'm giving them a different type of food than I normally do. It's so again, the live food is just unnecessary for me. I'm very much in the same way my cats have been living off of like Friskies or 9 Lives or whatever for their whole lives. I'm the same way with the fish. I got my Tetra flakes and some granules, and I mix it up a little bit, but that's it. I don't feed my fish expensive stuff. I don't feed them a huge variety. I don't do the live things and the real high end foods and all that. I just don't think it's necessary. And I think my fish speak for themselves. All right, Dade, I will catch you later. Robert, how are you doing this evening? No, Harriman, I've actually got the several packages of frozen bloodworms in my freezer that are just still in there. They've been in there for years at this point. I've just never, I might have thrown them away because I just went in there the other day and got a thing of coffee that I put in there from the last, God knows when. It was the last bag of coffee I had in there. And I don't remember thinking about, like, one of these days I'm going to throw these damn things away. So I might have finally gotten in there and thrown them away. I'm not 100% sure on that. But if I did, it took me years and years and years to finally get around to just tossing them. So I stopped feeding the bloodworms a long time ago. I don't know anything about working on Cadillacs. All I know is that I'm dreading ever having to buy a new vehicle because my vehicle's so old. It doesn't do shit. It doesn't have GPS. It doesn't try to talk to my phone. There's no screen. It's the way I like it. So anything I get, if I ever have to replace that truck, is going to have a screen in it. It's going to want to try to connect to my phone. I don't want all that crap. My wife gets emails from she gets alerts on her car. The dealership sends emails when it's time for her to get oil changes and stuff like that because they know everything that's going on with her car at the dealership, which just seems weird to me. It'd be one thing like if the information just went to Subaru international headquarters or something and it just got compiled with like user data or something, but this is like the dealership is keeping tabs on my wife's vehicle and where she goes and what she drives and how many miles, and presumably it gets all her telemetry, how fast she accelerates, how hard she hits the brakes, how hard she's cornering. All that stuff's in the car's computer, I'm sure. And so does that information get used if she's ever in an accident? Do the insurance companies, start asking questions about, oh, you slowed down awfully hard there? Like, I don't know. It just seems fucking weird that her car talks to her dealership all the time about what's going on. I do not want that. I like my car to just be a mechanical thing that I can get inside and drive around in. Exactly, Bob. She's gotten alerts that her tire pressure was low. She's literally had that alert come across on her phone, that she got a text on her phone from the dealership saying that one of her tire pressures was low. So, yeah. Well, I'm happy to say I've now had all 4 wheel bearings replaced on my truck, so those should be done. Those were $1,000 a piece. Um, I've replaced so much on that truck. Like the only thing really left for it to go up, and I shouldn't even say this, is either the transmission or the engine. Like everything else on that truck, I've pretty much had to fix at some point over the years since I bought it. A lot of it I had to fix as soon as I bought it because I bought a fucking lemon from a used car dealership in Pennsylvania. Don't ever buy a used car in Pennsylvania. What passes for inspected in Pennsylvania is a fucking joke. They check to see if it's a car. As long as it's a car, they say, yep, it passed. Well, there's one thing that comes up um, every time she starts her car, the screen lights up with the user statement that you have to hit I agree. And so it pops up saying like I agree that if I'm going to operate this vehicle, I'm going to operate it in a safe manner. I've never read it, but it's this whole like user agreement, and she just ignores it. And if you ignore it for 30 seconds or so, it just goes away and your regular screen pops up with all your stuff on it or whatever. But she says, I'm never agreeing to that damn thing. Like, what if I agree to that? And that means like they're not responsible if, I get in an accident or something, or like, so she never hits that I agree button. But still, like I said, all the car's information is being not only given to Subaru, but it's literally going directly to the dealership down here in Westminster. That's who she gets all her text messages from and whatnot. The car will tell her stuff. I mean, like messages come over the thing. Like my car tells me if I have low tire pressure, but it's a light that lights up on my dashboard. It's not a notification from the dealership on my screen. Like again, it's just so fucking weird. Before this is the first car we've had that does this. But the last truck she had was an Explorer, and that connected to her phone. So whenever she got, messages or whatever, like you could read the message right there in the truck, or you could talk on the phone through the speakers in the truck. You could do your GPS off your phone, like right through the truck and everything. I didn't even like that. I don't like the idea of my truck talking to my phone. Like these are fucking pieces of machinery. They're tools for me to use. I don't want my fucking screwdriver and my wrenches and shit all ganging up on me and making a plan or something. They shouldn't be talking to each other. That's just weird. I sound so old. Just got your truck inspected last week. Well, Pennsylvania has different kind of inspections. I think you have to do like an annual or a semi-annual or biannual. No, biannual every other year. I know you have to do that in New Jersey. You have to get your vehicle inspected every couple of years, but it's a fairly easy to pass inspection. It's just to make sure your car is overall safe. In Maryland, in order to sell a car that's been Maryland state inspected, it goes through a rigorous inspection. But the downside to the way Maryland does it is once I've purchased that car, I never have to get it inspected again. The only way like any bad thing is going to be found on that is literally like if my tires are so bald that a cop can see that and he can pull me over and give me a ticket or something like that. But there is no maintenance. Like I get my emissions done every 2 years, but there's nobody that like just checks to make sure the fucking suspension isn't falling apart or that the brakes are still good or anything like that. So we don't do it great either. We're too strict. I mean, it's ridiculously strict about passing in order to like sell your vehicle as an inspected vehicle. but then we never do it again. So we could maybe lighten up on the initial inspection, but then maybe every couple of years you just got to take your car and have looked at to make sure everything's okay. Or somewhere in between or something. But when I bought my truck from Pennsylvania, it was state certified, inspected, and the brakes were shit. They wouldn't pass Maryland inspection by a long way. The drive shaft was not even connected anymore. There's supposed to be a bearing in the middle. The bearing was not even there. The drive shaft was just free floating. I had holes in the exhaust. The exhaust was rusted out in several places. I needed 2 mufflers because my truck takes 2 mufflers. I paid top dollar for the truck. And then when I got home, I dumped another $3,000 into it, getting shit fixed just so it would pass Maryland inspection and I could actually put it on the road. So, yeah, I definitely bought a lemon. That's what I assume, Robert, but it makes her feel better not hitting it. So whatever. I can sit there for an extra second while the car's warming up. I've never had a Beamer. I used to drive Mercedes, but they were big when I worked for the moving company. When I worked for Allied Movers, all the trucks we had at the company I worked at, it was a franchise. So I worked for a mom and pop company, but they were an Allied mover. So we contracted through, did the moving for Allied and stuff like that. But we also did our own, private local stuff. And all their trucks were old Mercedes Benzes. I hated those things. When I first started driving them, I couldn't believe because I couldn't get them to go right. They just were dying on me and practically stalling out and whatnot. And one of the other drivers that was there told me that you got to wind it up to about like 3,000 RPM or something before you shift. And 3,000 RPM in a diesel truck is insane. Like, I've never driven a truck that could go that high in the RPMs. Usually you're shifting by 1,500, 1,800 RPMs. Something like that. And they told me you got to run it up to $3,000 to shift. And sure enough, as long as I ran that fucker up to $3,000 and shifted, it drove okay. But man, you had to twist that thing up. I just felt like it was going to come apart every time before you were ready to shift. And then, but they were junk. I hated those fucking Mercedes. But they were Mercedes. I can say I've driven a Mercedes before. All right, everybody. We are going to start winding it down. I'll get a few lights turned off and we can enjoy some disco ball lighting here. I'm actually going to put my dab stuff away now. I don't think I'm going to do any more dabs before the live stream's over. I got my vapor stuff in there I can puff on. So Sunday night, if you join us again, I do this every Friday and Sunday night for the most part. I do miss a night occasionally if I'm not feeling up for it, but I'm mostly here every Friday night and Sunday night, 8 p.m. for the general public. If you want a members only live stream, I do those on Wednesdays, but those are for members only. So you have to join the channel. It's $2.99 a month, and you'll get access to the Wednesday live streams, and you'll also get access to the Discord server and a few other little perks and whatnot if you're interested in joining for the membership. But Sunday night when we come back, we will get the sponge filter put into the shrimp tank. I'll save that for Sunday, so that'll give us something to do maintenance wise or whatever. I'm definitely not going to eat all of those ornaments in one go. I'm not going to smoke them all at one time either. I'll have to spread them out a little bit. I think that would be a little rough on the lungs, smoking on that. Well, yeah, I guess you can rev a Honda up to 7,000 RPM. I used to have a Ninja that I could rev up to 9,000 RPM, and there's a lot of motorcycles now that can go up to like 12 or 13,000 RPM. That's insane. But a big ass diesel truck, generally, you're maxing out your red lines around 2,000, 2,100 RPMs is where the red line is. You shift between, 15 and 1,800 typically. So running a big diesel truck up to $3,000 again sounds like the motor's ready to come apart. No, I hadn't planned on putting any in the fish tanks. I'll probably put a couple of little oddballs, hang them around the room here and there for the discerning eye to spot and notice from time to time. They'll get put around different places. Hang one in the back window of my car. That's always baffled me when you see people driving around with like marijuana bumper stickers. Nowadays, it's not, that big of a deal. But, 15, 20 years ago, you'd see the marijuana leaf bumper sticker on the back of somebody's car. Why not just put a fucking pull me over sign on your car? So take me to jail sign. Like, why do you advertise that you're doing something illegal? That just seems so dumb to me. But a lot of things do. All right, let's turn some lights out here and get some disco ball action happening for a few minutes. Has anybody tried that Biscoff butter I was talking about the other night? Oh, well, a lot of you didn't even hear about it because it was my members' live stream. But there's something called Biscoff butter, and it is made out of Biscoff cookies. And it's kind of like it looks and has the texture and consistency of peanut butter, but it tastes like creamy, sweet Biscoff cookies, and it's the most amazing shit ever. They do make a generic, like a Walmart store brand, which is slightly different in that it's got a creamier, less dense sort of texture to it. But the flavor is really similar. It's just, oh God, it's so good. It's so good. I've been thinking about different shit to try to put it on. The best thing I've put it on so far was a Quaker Oats or Nature Valley granola bar, and I smeared it on a granola bar and ate it, and it was stunning. Tonight I have pretzel sticks. I was thinking about dipping pretzel sticks in it and eating them because pretzel sticks dipped in peanut butter is pretty good. So this stuff is on a different league than peanut butter. It's playing a different game than peanut butter. So don't go into this thinking this is going to be like peanut. It's not. It's amazing if you ever try it, and I definitely recommend trying it. So, all right, everybody, we'll put it out there for your final thoughts. I'm already starting to lose people, so I don't know if I'm giving people seizures with the disco lights. I myself can only take this for so long before we got to wrap it up. She hired me out as a Hollywood smoke machine. All right, let me put this away over here. Oh. All right, let me put this back on. Knocked my damn heater thing off. Now I can't see how it goes back on because it's dark over here. There we go. Perfect. All right, everybody. Looks like that's it for the comments and questions and whatnot, so we can go ahead and wrap it up there. Remember, I will be back Sunday night. We're going to do a little work at the shrimp tank. And if you want to join up for membership, it is, again, $2.99 a month, and that'll get you access to the members-only live stream on Wednesdays, and you'll get access to the Discord server. So, all right, everybody, thanks for all the fish, or I'm sorry, so long, and thanks for all the fish. And I will see you all on Sunday. Good night.